Hey guys, it's Roderick. I'm here with Capote versus the Swans, Season 2, Episode 6, Hats, Gloves, and Effete Homosexuals. Okay, so this was a very interesting episode because it really once again made me question what we just watched in the previous episode, right? Because this episode takes place at the beginning of 1978. The past episode we just saw was the beginning of 1975, right after the Esquire article came out. And I'm like, so we're talking, so there's like some time that's been passed, but not so much. It just, the pacing and the timing kind of was jarring. It was just kind of like jarring. But this was a very complicated and very layered episode because there's a lot going on in this episode. One of the themes, or probably the theme based upon the title, is about things going out of style, recognizing when your time has passed. And really, I thought that, I really like the Gus Van Sant episodes. When Gus Van Sant directs the episodes, those are my favorite episodes. We'll get to the part where he just masterfully does a fantastic scene. I'm a huge fan of his work. You should go IMDb him, look up some of his stuff. I am just a huge fan. And I can just always tell when he does these episodes, just the kind of depth and nuance that he has, from the disco scene to the infamous Palm Springs scene we'll get to. They're just held with a certain artistic, masterful quality that I think that really elevates this episode. I mean, the acting again is fantastic. Chloe Sevigny as CZ just really steals the show. I would not be surprised if this show just sweeps the Oscars because, not the Oscars, excuse me, Oscars is coming up this weekend, sweeps the Emmys because there's just, from production to, set design to costuming to acting. This guy is just, the guy who plays, I think his name is Tom Holland, I believe, which excuse me, was wrong because I feel like that's the Spider-Man guy's name. I think it's Tom Hollander. I would not be surprised if he gets Best Actor for Emmy because his portrayal of Truman Capote is just fantastic. So let's get into this episode because again, we're talking about layers, we're talking about themes. We're at our 6th episode, right? So now all our storylines are supposed to intersect. We're supposed to now see kind of getting a crisping of what the complications are. Our protagonist is now coming almost at the apex of his journey. We're about to get the penultimate episode on episode 7. That's typical, but because, as I discussed in my previous episode, Ryan Murphy shows like to kind of bifurcate or have 2 tracks. I feel like episodes 1 through 4 was like one story, and now we're getting the second set of stories, right? Because remember I asked you whose story was this? I felt like the first part of the story was Babes, episodes 1 through 4, and now 5, 6, 7, 8 is going to be Truman's. It's going to be the Truman arc, right? And so I guess they're all going to kind of dovetail together in either the next episode or episode after that. It's a very wonky way. I won't say wonky, but a non-conventional way in which to set up episodes. But when you're Ryan Murphy, you're getting $500 million from every series or network you're going to. You can set up your shows however you want to do it. I'm not complaining. I'm liking it. So let's just get right into it. So as I said, it's 1978, and Truman and CZ are at Galore's hat shop, and she's looking for gardening hats, but they're going out of style. So we meet this, another gay hat shop clerk or whatever. He's complaining, and Truman starts to reminisce about the last time they were here when they all got drunk for Good Friday, and they all bought Easter bonnets and whatever like that. And you can tell he's still wistfully wishing away about this friendship, which I would think after last episode he would have been more resolute. But we know that's not the case because we see the episode before, later in 1975, where he's still trying to beg and find out what's going on. As he does in this episode, where he asks CZ about Babe, and she's saying, "Oh, she's getting the best care, she's doing okay." So he's still missing her, right? Now they're leaving, and he's like, "I gotta go get," and I haven't figured out a nickname yet for Bathhouse Trade's daughter, because Kate Carey ain't hitting it. But right now, we're just gonna call her Bathhouse Trade's daughter. You know exactly who we're talking about. He was going to Tiffany and get her a pair of pearl earrings so she could have something real. Because then the next scene is Truman is at the hairdresser with another old homosexual clerk doing her hair, and he's getting her hair done all matronly, and she really doesn't like it. And he's back to drinking again. And she's like, I thought you were going to stop drinking. He's like, it's for my stomach. It's an aperitif or whatever. And in that scene, I was like, oh my God, he's doing a Build-A-Babe, right? He is literally trying to create another babe from Bathhouse Trade's daughter, right? And that's confirmed when they show up to the Capote and she's dressed all matronly and she's sitting down. He orders oysters. She gets the salad when she's shuffling around and everyone's looking at her. And I was like, oh my God, I guess if Babe's out your life, you're going to build you another babe. But we all know that Babe is irreplaceable. So therefore, this ain't really working, right? So then they're having lunch or whatever like that. And Bathhouse Trade's daughter's kind of onto them and like, you got me dressed all matronly. What are you trying to do? All this stuff. And he's like, well, you need to be more grateful because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Like, Truman is really acting like the Swan, and he's treating her like the Swans used to treat him. So as they're sitting having lunch, and he's like trying to give her tips of being a writer. He's like, part of being a writer is about you like eavesdropping, right? So he's trying to teach her how to eavesdrop or whatever. And then I was just like, they're going on. And then all of a sudden, right, they're like, Lee and Slim and Lee are having lunch and they are seething. They're like, they can't believe he showed his face here. They can't believe what's going on. Now, they were talking about the fact that Lee's dating this guy named Peter Beard. He has money. The sex is great. And then Lee's having some money problems, right? And Slim's like, just get rid of your house in London and Paris. She's like, bitch, no, I'm trying to keep those shit. Just in case I got to run from somebody, I need a place to go, right? So anyway, they get up to leave. Slim don't even go by the fake defunct talking to Truman, right? So then Lee's like, oh, hi. Because Lee's like, she had her dressed like a Minneapolis gardener or something like that. So she kind of goes and low-key shades Bathhouse Trade's daughter. And then it's like, then Truman's like, oh, Lee, let's do lunch. She's like, sure, call me. And then that's it. And I was like, Truman, give it up. Turn it loose, let it go. Lee ain't fun. Those two in particular are 10 toes down with the fuck Truman Capote, right? So you better off with CZ, maybe, somebody else. Got Ann Woodward. She's unalived herself. Maybe you try to work the Babe angle because, she's about to go see Jesus in a second. But those two ain't really fucking with Truman. And so he's like all hurt or whatever. Then they go to Dick Avendon's for the photo shoot. And, again, so what we're seeing is like Truman, the hat clerk, the hairdresser, all these series of old gay homosexuals working in retail and sales and how they're really kind of solidified part of the firmament of high society. So Dick Avendon is an old friend of him. It's just to read him for Phil. Be like, girl, what do you got her dressed in? This is 1978. She's young. People need to be seen young or whatever. So he's like, go bring some boy twink hairdresser, gets her all done up or whatever. I was like, go whatever. And then he says, Truman now is like, look, you need to stop the drinking. You need to get back to writing. Look, I told the girls, you're a writer. You can't be expected to be telling him all your business and then think he's not going to write about it. And Truman was like, well, thank you, and whatever. So they were like, okay, fine. So then Kay looks so much better for her photo shoot. She starts to dance. Truman's like, why didn't you have me dancing? Because you're so drunk, I thought you were going to break my neck and fuck up my shit. So anyway, that was a really good scene. And so then our next scene is, again, this really great Gus Van Sant scene of CZ and Truman at Studio 54, right? And it's obvious that Truman is trying to recapture his youth. Him and CZ, they're dancing, they're having a great time, whatever. So then we cut to the next day, and CZ comes in hot and hotter than fish grease because Page Six done caught them drinking, and they caught them old, talking about, how they're trying to reclaim their youth. And CZ's like, no, I'm classy. I'm part of the high society. I will not be made fun of in Page Six. So that was our last dancing night, So, and then, so the truth is, our title is Effete, Homosexuals, and you can tell that Truman is feeling tired. Effete meaning to be worn out. And so this is a great show for the up your vocabulary because we got slattern, we got Effete. Y'all gonna be SAT ready by the end of this series, right? So then Kate comes over with groceries, and Truman is 2 months behind on groceries. He's all gossiping with some lady Diane about everything that's going on, and she's like picking up a bottle like, you back to drinking again? I thought it was just champagne in your stomach. He gets off the phone, and then he just started. Truman's mouth is still lethal. And the first thing I said, I was like, oh shit, you acting like her daddy. You got Bathhouse Trade's daughter in here acting like Bathhouse Trade, which is what she says when she starts crying. Because Truman's mouth is just too lethal. Like, if my mouth was that lethal, and it nearly is, that is why I stay sober, right? And if I'm deciding to get drunk, I just keep my mouth quiet. That's how people know I'm drunk, because I'm not saying anything, because I know that I can easily release the Dracarys just on a burp. So I just keep my mouth quiet when I start to drink, because I know it'll just... And when you have a lethal mouth, that's what you got to do. But Truman obviously ain't got popped enough times to know that when he starts drinking, he just needs to put a kerchief in his mouth and tie it over a ball gag or something, because his mouth is just way too lethal. He has a couple of those in this episode, which I'm just like, you lucky Bathhouse Trade ain't around, because you know what would happen with your slick ass mouth. So anyway, he's like, look, I'm going on television. I need to have these drinks, because after 3 drinks, I'm on, and that's it. He's like, I'm not writing anymore. I'm really selling a persona, right? So anyway, the Swans are dining. They're complaining how there's no straight men in New York City. So come to find out, Truman went on the television show, and he just said some shit about Gore Vidal, right? So then he's been calling CZ and calling Lee, because apparently the story he told on television, Lee told him. And Gore Vidal now is going to sue. And it has to do with Jackie O and their daughter. So what the story is, we'll skip forward. What the story is supposedly Gore Vidal was at the White House, and he insulted Lee and Jackie O because they're sisters. He insulted their mother. Jackie O got upset. Robert Kennedy Jr. escorted him out. He grabbed Jacqueline Kennedy by the shoulder, and then that's the whole situation, right? So Lee supposedly told this story to Truman, and that's how Truman ended up going and telling on television. Now, most reasonable people would have kept that story under their hat and not said anything, but we know Truman, just everything that comes in his eyes goes out his mouth, so he didn't want to told the story, and Gore Vidal, who we learned from last season is also gay, was like, bitch, you ain't gonna try to spray me and try to play me all up on Dick Cavett or whatever television show it was. I'm gonna sue your motherfucking ass, right? So, as we know, a little legalese, the ultimate defense and only defense to defamation is the truth. So therefore, he needs Lee to come and say that story is true, because otherwise it's defamation, if not defamation per se, depending upon the jurisdiction that they're in, right? And Lee's like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to get involved. It's just 2 faggots fighting, whatever. And CZ is like, bitch, what? Now I know you don't lost your mind, because we don't talk like that over our Niçoise salad. And as many gays as you have float in about your life, so Babe and CZ are just over it, right? And they were like, okay, girl, look, that was a bit much. That was harsh. And she's like, gays serve an important part of our ecosystem. There's a way in which we can be with gay men that we can't be with other women. We let the armor down. Then Babe's like, I don't know, they wear armor anymore. Then they barely wear bras because they're liberated. But, you know, you get, again, once I talked about that symbiotic relationship between gay men and glamorous women, right? Because it works in both ways. The gay men get their protection, they get their covering from the brutal, toxic, masculine men. They also get so then they repay that coverage by helping the straight women with their fashions, with their styling, with their self-esteem, by being that listening ear. And that's how this symbiotic relationship works, right? But as we'll see later in the episode, when one party decides to break that symbiotic cycle, there are consequences, but it's only one-sided, right? And that's kind of what we get to when we're talking about this whole relationship, right, with Truman and the Swans. So as they're walking and talking, they're going to the department store, and they're looking for gloves, because Babe's like, I feel like a pincushion, I'm getting bruises. And her husband gave her the side eye, which if that cheap motherfucker gave me that side eye about being pins and bruises, I would have pulled out a knife and says, you know what else don't go well? Stab wounds, because you done made a whole ass fool out of me all up and down the Upper East Side. So if you don't like my pin, if you don't like my needle marks, how about you get a knife mark? Because you got nothing to say to me about that. But again, as we know, Babe is a better motherfucking person than me. So she's looking for gloves. So even when she's like, I'm just gonna wear gloves all the time just so the motherfucker don't say shit to me, right? So they look in the department store for gloves and they're like, where's Miss blah, blah, blah? And the clerk is like, child, she not retired. People don't wear gloves no more. Why don't you go into Lord and Taylor? And they're like, girl, it was like too much. A, our little glove lady's gone. B, you done called us out of style. And C, you done sent us to Lord and Taylor, which, by the way, I love Lord. I used to love Lord and Taylor. So I was like, okay, fine, right? So anyway, now Truman has gone to Palm Springs, right? Because theoretically, so what he's doing is he's drying out, but also he's avoiding service because if he can't be served, then he can't be sued. So he thinks, right? But also you can serve agents of the person or whatever like that. So anyway, he's outside talking to Bathhouse Trade's daughter, talking about how he's drying out and writing, and he's sitting here swirling a peppermint stick and vodka. And I was like, you know what, Truman? Every time I want to feel bad for you, I can't feel bad for you because you stay on some bullshit, right? So he's swizzling the vodka in the peppermint stick, and I guess that's him not drinking because he just sucked it on a peppermint stick dipped in vodka. I said, you know what, bitch? I don't know, whatever. Then the doorbell rings, and I was like, and the way it's kind of set up is like very 70s. I love Palm Springs, that very like Art Deco home. And he's like, and the guy comes to the door, is like, howdy, I'm here to fix your garbage disposal. Now, in the hands of a less depth, less experienced director, this would have looked very porn-ish, right? Because it's set up just like a porn scene, right? But what Gus Van Sant does is he gives you the master shot, right? The guy at the door, Truman lets them in, and so we get our master shot, we get the sink, which is just a shot, there's a big shot of both of them in there. So then, in order to accentuate the subtext, which comes next out of Truman's mouth, he drops the camera below to be looking in the sink, which is at crotch level, which also extenuates Truman's when he starts asking where you from, what you do, blah, 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 that this is subtext is all about sex. This was such an excellent scene because it mirrored the visual direction, mirrored the subtext of what was going on of the script. And it just, so you obviously knew that this was going to go somewhere left, but just by the way in which the way the camera was set and also the subtext being the words on the script meaning something other than what's being spoken, right? Because what Truman is asking isn't really asking where you from, what you do, who you dating. It's who you are, how big your dick is, and can I fuck you, right? Which is what he says to them. He goes, hi, Rick, how would you like me to suck your cock? And so I had to pause, right? I was like, now where is this going to go, right? This is going to go one way or another. And it went one way. Because the next scene is Truman sitting here lapping up the fluids that Rick has released. And I was like, you know what, Truman? Every time I get ready to be mad at you, you do, because that's to be able to pull a straight, appealing, masculine presenting workman at your house is a skill that most gay men these days don't have, right? Most gay men are only interesting online, or as I call OIO, or not interesting at all, NIAA. So so the art of cruising and being able to pick up a man just willy-nilly like that, most gay men of this generation don't have, but only an old queen can pick up air conditioner repairman or whatever. So then, they're talking and Truman's just lapping him up or whatever. And then I was just like, and he's, drives motorcycles and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden the left makes another left because Truman's like, well, why don't I go with you, to your next appointment? And I was like, okay, Truman, you kind of clingy. Ain't you got some other shit to do? Like Death Star 5 Stalker, right? But no, he goes with him to the next appointment, tells the story about a shit baby. Good, cute story, not worth repeating. You've already seen the episode. It was fine. The only good thing was that the boat was called Royal Flush and the woman had a shit baby. Okay, fine. But see, that's how Truman get in trouble on TV, trying to be cute and telling everybody's fucking business all the time, right? So anyway, he invites, we're calling him Kid Freon, because that's just, and I like that, because I was like, okay, we call him Kid Freon, because he's dealing with air conditioners or whatever. He done invited Kid Freon to go with him back to New York City. And I was just like, okay. So now, Kid Freon is back in New York City with Jack, CZ, and Bathhouse Trey daughter. That's a hell of a table, because I don't know what type of man you are to let your boyfriend, lover, bring his little trade piece all the way from Palm Springs to sit up and have dinner with you at LaCote Bass, right? And CZ is like, you know what, bitch, you put me through it all the time. How come every time you always showing up with some new trade that I gotta fucking have shuffle my salad around with? Because all Kid Freon is doing is sitting there talking about air conditioners, and CZ's like, bitch, do I look like I be installing air conditioners or I care? All I do is flip scripts, like flip switches and write checks. That's my level of air conditioner business. I flip it on. If it ain't working, I write a check for somebody to fix it, right? But he's going on, and obviously Jack is getting annoyed. And I was like, Jack, you a whole ass fool for sitting here for this motherfucking lunch anyway, right? So anyway, so then they spill the tea about the whole Go Over Doll story, and Truman is still trying to get Lee to call him back because I guess he's been served. And CZ's kind of like skirting around the issue. She's not saying anything or whatever. And then Jack is like, look, just apologize to Go Over Doll and just be friends with it. And now, so what we see is Truman kind of adopts that slim policy. That if you let a motherfucker play in your face enough times, he'll keep playing in your face. So he's like, no, I'm not going to apologize to him. Fuck Go Over Doll and whatever, right? So later that night, Truman is all like spurred up with Kid Freon, who's watching Love Boat, and then Andy Warhol shows up, and then all of a sudden Truman's like, well, I should be on Love Boat. So then he's trying to get him some dick, and Kid Freon is like, hey, let me finish this show, and then, you know, I'll work you out or whatever. And Truman's like, oh my God, why won't you fuck me, whatever? Just being beggy, just being clingy. And he's like, look, dude, you can suck my dick during commercials. At that statement, I would have got the fuck up out my bed, right? At that point, when someone is just going to give me allow pity blowjobs during the commercials, is when Truman should have got the fuck up out the bed. But he got the hint because he goes, oh my God, it's finally happened. I finally have gone out of style, right? And I think that's what Effete Homosexuals is all about, right? The fact that, you know, it's about being worn out. It's about being once at the top, and Truman is unable, like most men at that age. You know, I say at that age as I'm very close to that age at 48, and Truman at this point is probably like 55, you know, well, about mid-50s, of, you know, seeing your youth go away, you know, seeing younger people and being old enough to remember your young times, but not being young enough to be able to recreate them without people looking at you and being shamed, right? Like that literally is what middle age is all about. Spoiler alert, right? Trying to do shit that you used to want to do without people giving you shameful looks. I'm just telling you. So anywho, he's like, it finally happened. So then Truman meets with his attorney. And the attorney's like, look, you either need to apologize or get Lee on the phone because she ain't returning my phone calls. And as I've explained to you, there is only one defense to defamation, right? That's the truth. So he's like, look, let me just call CZ up. Boop, 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 boop. Hi, it's Uncle Tru. CZ's like, girl, I'm not ready for you. We're making samosas for my daughter. So what you want? Have you talked to Lee? Has she called you? Why did she call me back? Now, see, CZ is such a good friend, right? Because this is what a good friend does. She's like, look, girl, the reason Lee ain't calling you back, and then she recounts the conversation, and I was like, and he was like, okay. So he hangs up the phone with her, and the lawyer's like, well, then your options are gone then. So he's like, and he still don't want to do the apology, right? He still doesn't want to do the apology, but he's like, you know what? These bitches have tried me for the very last time because the motherfucker she's dating, he done sucked more dicks than a boat attendant in Fire Island in August. And you know what? And you know how don't be here for Truman's lethal mouth, but that read was worth it because Lee really was disrespectful all the way around with that. So I really was like, okay, they gonna do me like this? But I'm gonna really show you better than I can tell you what like he told Ann. I'm going to show you what a vengeful faggot looks like. And I was like, okay, the best defense is a good offense. And I feel like that's what James Baldwin was trying to tell him last episode, which you need to quit begging these bitches and you just need to go full throttle because you know all their tea anyway, and that's going to be the only way to keep them off your back, and they may high-key respect you, knowing that you're like, look, if you don't put me back in society and fucking play nice with me, I'll tell every motherfucking piece of business you got, and I'll make up some shit. So which is where he ends up at the end of the episode, right? So anyway, so Truman and Jack are on a walk in Central Park. Child, Kid Freon and Bathhouse Trey's daughter are all cuckooing and kikiing. And I was like, what in the holy fuck is this whole ass mess, right? Like, it's Kid Freon fucking Bathhouse Trey daughter, and then Jack and then Truman are walking, and Truman's like, you know what? These ungrateful bitches. Because as long as we gay people are out here, prep them up, helping them, treating them like Pomeranians, they like us. But the moment we start to snarl our teeth and tell them no, then it's off to the pound you go, which is the nature of the symbiotic relationship, right? Because the gay man enters the symbiotic relationship at a disadvantage because without the covering and protection of the straight woman, he is left unprotected. So therefore, she thinks that she has a higher hand in this relationship. So then when she decides to pull back and leave the gay man unprotected, out of social circles, out of like distinct excursions or whatever like that, then they think that's to teach me a lesson. So he's like, you know what? Let me pull out my chalkboard because I'm about to teach these chicks a lesson too. Then him and Jack talk about, you got to go back to Switzerland. We'll always be us. Jack, you're a whole ass fool. He'd have made a fool out of you too many times. So then so that's when Jack calls Rick Kid Freon. So I was like, you know what? That's a good nickname for Kid Freon. And I was like, okay, cute, right? So then we find out, ultimately, Truman gets on television and he apologizes to Gore Vidal, right? And I was just like, oh my God. And CZ is just sitting here crying because we don't see Truman, but we hear him on the television and he sounds drunk. He sounds high. And CZ is crying, looking at just the deterioration of her friend, right? And then Truman's like, so then he goes to the plastic surgeon. He wants to get freshened up. Of course, that's what girls do when you're at your last ditch. And he's with his doctor. And he's like, okay, girl, but if you quit drinking, then you wouldn't have so many bags under your eyes, right? And then he pulls out his pill case. And he's like, who gave you all this stuff? What are you doing? So anyway, Truman's getting plastic surgery or whatever like that. But so then anyway, Truman goes home and then he's like, you know what? The fire's under his ass. And this was left me confused, right? The way the episode sets up towards the ending, the resolution of the episode after our climax, is that Truman realizes after the comment that was made by Lee that he should go forward and to start to write his book. But I thought that is where we were at the end of the last episode. So Truman is the one of those motherfuckers who needs refresher courses, right? So we got Billy Baldwin in 1975, and then we got Lee in 1978. So in a 3-year span, he keeps learning the same lessons that these bitches aren't trustworthy, right? Okay, whatever. Truman comes home, and Kid Freon is sitting there with his bags packed. And this was such a good scene. Because previous old Truman would have just unleashed. I thought sure he's going to throw something. He's like, you know what? I can't even be mad at you. I could say that because he's like, I miss my fiance. He's like, we're about to get married. He goes, I can be mad at you about you and your white trash fiance, call you a user, talk about that she can't suck dick. But you know what? I just can't find it in me. I just can't. So keep the Rolex. Buy me a teddy. He's like, maybe you should get a teddy bear on the way out. He's like, why don't you just buy me a teddy bear with your broke ass? Why don't you just go ahead and do that, right? And then Truman sits there, so he starts to write another chapter of Answered Prayers where he reflects about his friendship and he mixes in truth and fiction to this analogy of life without the Swans, of him being in a desert in Tangiers, right? Hoping, waiting for water, remembering the good times, and not having that, right? So the Gus Van Sant, all the episodes are great, but the Gus Van Sant episodes just really go to an all nother level, and this was a fantastic episode. So let me know what you think, guys. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe. Check out some of my other videos, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.